Welcome to Deep Speak, where we ask the questions to the answers of the universe. Follow our crazy trains of thought as we start on one topic and end up
in a whole other dimension.
Good morning, everyone.
Welcome back to Deep Speak.
We are going to be talking about
Emotional control, self-control.
Self-control. How do you maintain your own peaceful emotions? How do you control them and stay in a space of love and compassion in the midst of chaos and adversity? Let's talk about it.
This got brought up this morning. Who knows how things get brought up with us, but...
So today we were talking about a Facebook post that I had, and that post said, "Your triggers are your responsibility. It isn't the world's obligation to tiptoe around you." And, a lot of people understand that, and I think we're learning that lesson a lot more in our world today, where we're noticing everybody who a lot of our population seems to be demanding we change so that they can feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And that is causing quite a bit of chaos in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like giving a child, one piece of candy, and then they say, well, now I want 10, or I want the whole cake. They tend to, you give them an inch and then they want a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you draw the line between, okay, I know that that's a sensitive subject for you, so I'm not going to talk about that with you, to, I'm not going to constantly walk on eggshells in order to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for myself, where I've come to is I will make adjustments in certain ways. And I have my own boundaries set in that, like where I will be respectful of your feelings and the fact that you haven't worked through that trauma or haven't worked through those issues yet. But I also am not somebody who's going to constantly have to use all of this effort to just navigate a conversation with you so that I don't step on your trauma mines that are set everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes really difficult. It's really difficult to have a conversation with somebody who is an extremely victim mentality and believes that everything in the world and everything that's happened to them is special, unique, and that it has been horrible for them. And that might be absolutely a true statement, but at what point do you just say, I've had a horrible life, woe is me, and then at what point do you actually say, okay, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to learn lessons from it. I'm going to become a stronger, better person from it, and not need everyone around you to change that, or change so that you don't get triggered.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to define victim mentality, please, in a broad term?
Okay.
Because I don't think a lot of people even realize what that is.
Right. And I've made this statement, and I will say it several times, that there are a lot of people in the world who are victims, right? And victim, it can be even subjective, right? We're a victim to taxes, right? Paying in taxes. We're a victim to, high gas prices. We're a victim to all sorts of things every day. I mean, someone is doing something to you against your will, basically, right? But a victim mentality, so there are a lot of victims of heinous crimes, abuse and torture and all kinds of things, who don't have a victim mentality. So people who have been victim to things doesn't necessarily mean you have a victim mentality, because someone who's gone through abuse, have had their nose broken, whatever, they can actually look back on that and appreciate what they've learned from it and have love and sympathy for the person who did it to them, forgiveness, ultimate forgiveness, right? and not feel like, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim to it.
Would you say that's true empowerment when you can reach that kind of level?
And that's what we're talking about, is how do you take something that was horrible that you went through and make it into something good? I mean, isn't that the ultimate revenge?
Yeah, it is.
To like take a horrible situation and then become like, turn it into gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's people who have been absolute victims. You cannot deny it, right? Victims of crimes and all these things, and they don't have a victim mentality. And then there are people who have not gone through any sort of traumatic situations, but still have a victim mentality. Everything is like, oh my God, I have to go to work and I have to put gas in my car. And this person said the wrong word to me the other day, and I can't believe they said that. And I
read this Facebook post about being triggered and not having to tiptoe, and then that triggered me.
Yes.
And it made me really angry.
Right. And so I think that a lot of people get that confused. They'll, that's why underneath that post, I actually said this post is for people who get triggered. It's a message to you to say, hey, you don't have to be a victim to this. You can actually do something about it. You can, if you feel like everyone and everything continues to push your buttons, you can remove your buttons. That's the only true power to have.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that nobody bumps into your buttons is to remove them.
What if you had to sum up our current population, whether it's America or the world or whatever, how many people do you think understand and remove their victim mentality, and how many people still are always falling victim to everything that's being said, like an extreme, like everything that's said to them the wrong way, and all their problems, and are victim to it? What is the ratio, do you think?
I don't really know, because I haven't come across a lot of those people in real life.
Does it seem like they're usually online?
Oh, most of them
right.
You see them on TikTok, you see them on Facebook, keyboard warriors.
Yep.
You see these people who are like, everybody needs to change so that I can feel better, and I need a safe space in this entire world. So be careful about exactly what you say to me.
Do you think it's possible these people are actually a minority then, a smaller portion of the ratio?
It might be. It might just be this. It might be that you have millions of wheels and there's 4 of them, and you only realize you only notice the 4 because they're so squeaky. It
does seem like that.
Yeah.
Those squeaky wheels are pretty annoying, though.
They are, but they also give us an
attention.
Opportunity to reflect on, where am I complaining too much in my life?
Yeah, that's true.
What perspective has maybe caused a little bit of victim mentality can creep in really easy. We're all subject to it. Definitely. Like taxes coming around, the bend here, like having to pay $10,000 in taxes. What? Yeah. Then you're sending it overseas to fund horrible things. Right. I don't want to pay that.
Where's our receipt?
Yeah.
Can we get a receipt?
Yeah.
So, right. Okay. So you're saying that pretty much everyday life, you can be a victim to anything pretty much.
Yeah. A victim can be perspective. And the only reason I'm saying that, and people are going to be like, well, there are people who are literally robbed and raped. And yes. Yeah. I'm not denying that they're victims, like obviously. But the victim mentality is what I'm talking about, is perspective on that. Like if you feel like you have been hurt or could be hurt by every little wind that blows, that's a highly sensitive victim mentality. And I don't think that that's something, I don't think we are doing a service to any of those people to enable that. We have to be able to draw a line. Where do we respect what you're going through and allow you space to heal? And where do we say, I'm just going to tow down to you and change how I act so that you feel better, which never gives you any space to grow and change. If I say your victim mentality is, valid and good and healthy for you, what is ever going to give them a kick in the butt to actually take their power back?
Mm-hmm.
That's a horrible disservice to them by enabling that.
Mm-hmm.
By saying, you don't know, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'll
Mm-hmm.
change how I'm talking to you so that you can feel better. And then they're going to expect every single person in the world to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's really tough on them, because then they have to constantly go around the world educating everyone how to act, how to treat them.
It's kind of what's happening.
It is. It is. And I don't know. I think that, social media, TikTok, whatever, is all kind of played into that. I think that what we're going through is quite a perversion. Mm-hmm. And if you know what the word perversion means, it's basically a distortion of something. We're going through a perversion of goodness, of good. Mm-hmm. And I mean that we started out by saying, hey, you know what? Don't be mean to people. Like, be respectful to them. Be kind to them. If they're hurting about something, they just lost their mother, don't kick them in the face and be like, oh, you stupid mother. Mm-hmm. Or she was bad. Like, okay, yeah, don't be kind to people.
Yeah, why?
And we perverted that.
Right.
Hold that thought. We perverted it, and we took it all the way to this other side of like, okay, now be careful if you mention eggs in the morning because they are sensitive about, people eating eggs. Like, oh my God, really? Mm-hmm. Stop. Like that. You've overcorrected. Mm-hmm. Please stop overcorrecting. We're doing that in so many areas in our world.
Well, it's weird that, like, I remember in the 90s, the term that arose, I'm pretty sure I started hearing it in the 90s, was political correctness.
Right.
And yeah, and you don't hear it as much anymore. But it kind of seems like it started with that, and I thought it was ridiculous. Well, like defining things how would you define that?
In the way that's socially acceptable.
Currently socially acceptable. Right. You can't say certain words that might trigger some group or people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that is basically what we're talking about. And then it just grew from there. But it felt like for a while that it went away, honestly. Like people were just like, screw that.
Right.
Like I ain't, freedom, man. Like I ain't going to tiptoe around you. And then now it's just gone like way overboard. Like the worst it's ever been in my lifetime.
We gave an inch and they took a freaking mile. And it's really caused damage to our world.
Why do people that have actually gone through traumatic things, how do they still end up being a victim for a long time, an undisclosed amount of time? Whereas you mentioned the people that really don't have really serious problems. It's almost more of a mental issue where they augment their problems or perceive their problems, and then they still have that kind of victim mentality. But why are there still people that actually are victims of something traumatic and they don't? What defines people that can snap out of it and take their power back over their emotional control of themselves? And why are there not? What is the difference, do you think, between the two people?
I honestly think, if you want to break, there's lots of reasons because everybody's different. But I think that one of the biggest things is that do you really want to heal? Or do you really want to feel comfortable in the moment?
That's so good. So I guess that would lead to one other thing. Like, would you say a lot of people use it as a definition of their character or their past? Like, this defines me. This trauma actually defines me now.
It creates some sort of feeling of superiority because through your trauma. This is my story. Now I'm special. Now I'm unique. Now I have something that people will find interesting and also will cause them to feel, oh, you poor thing, and give me attention. So it's almost attention seeking, even if it's subconscious. Oh God, this is gonna trigger people. Right. But it's true. If you can sit back, and I will say it for myself, going through this cancer has given me a really good example of that. I notice how people treat me differently when I say I have stage 4 cancer.
Right.
People definitely are a little more loving towards me, a
Yeah.
little more like they give me a piece of their heart right there when they
Right.
hear it.
Right.
And that's like kind of addicting, I would think, for some people. If you don't have it yourself, if you're not fully balanced yourself, which nobody is really fully balanced, but if you're not really trying yourself to love yourself and give yourself that heart and compassion and look for love in all kinds of things like nature and, a good cup of coffee or something, if you're not fulfilled, you're going to be hungry for that attention, hungry for that love, and hungry for other people's heart and compassion. What do you think about that specialness? People's need to feel special and unique, and so they hold on to these stories that define them. That's the thing. They get like you get to decide what defines you. We talked about this in an earlier podcast. Was that in the Law of Attraction podcast?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you get to decide. Why would you choose it to be a horrible event instead of a good event?
I don't know. Like, one thing is, I feel like it's a naivety again. I'll bring up Batman again because we just watched that movie and it's amazing.
The
Batman. The new one. Okay, so anyway, I know, again, when I was a teenager watching like the animated series and the earlier Tim Burton movies were out, blah, 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 like that the criminals were a little more interesting to me. Now, looking back, I'm like, I can see why I thought that in different ways, but the naivety of glorifying these criminals all had like a backstory, right? Something that created them, maybe steered them to go down the wrong path, or
a lot of them were victims.
Or a lot of them were
to
victims.
Being an orphan,
right?
Or to being, damaged by
or poverty, like growing up, having to do things that other people wouldn't have to do, and
Batman series is definitely about economic gap.
Yeah. So, I didn't want to talk about the movie or the series per se, but the backstories that we give ourselves, I feel like when you're naive, they tend to gravitate towards something traumatic, and for some reason that's a starting point. Because I even remember feeling like that when I was a teenager. Like, what makes me interesting?
Yeah.
Like, what makes me? Like,
right.
Maybe I'm kind of boring. Like, why don't I have this cool like backstory? That. I remember meeting other kids too that maybe seemed cooler, edgier or something, and they had, my mom's dead or something. Like, they always seem to have some story that they would wear as a badge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I don't know what it was, but I remember somebody that, had their parents gone or something, but I was like, well, shit, I'm pretty boring, like my parents are divorced, but whose aren't,
Right. It's
nothing
not special anymore.
Yeah, nothing was like in my mind outstanding that would make me an interesting character unless there was something traumatic,
Right.
And I remember like in my 20s, like no matter what, if I would experience something that was traumatic to me, a lot of times it was never enough for the outside world. It was like, no matter how much trauma you have or emotional turbulence, it's never enough for the outside world. And so that kind of caught my attention, though. I'm like, wait, am I playing this game where I'm trying to get noticed in that way now?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an attention whore for how bad things I think, how I think things are so bad for me. Mm-hmm. And then crept in social media in my life.
I was just going to say that.
I did that for a little bit.
Social media has been huge in people trying to feel special. How many likes can I get? How many comments? Has anyone commented on my post yet? Or
right. Yeah.
Have I been ratioed yet? Like, what's, it's.
I was no different in the beginning. I'm like, I can see what's addicting to this. I saw it right away,
Yeah. It's it kind of mirrors high school or middle school or elementary school, like how popular you are.
So that's a really good point. Like for me, I didn't go through the MySpace phase or anything in between, like early 2000s, I've never really been a computer person in general, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was a whole decade, a little more after high school until I got on, Facebook. And then I remember it feeling sort of like a high school reunion at the time
It was.
because
Most
that's
people
where you
connected to their
found,
old high school
yep,
friends.
it's like
Yeah.
you picked up where you left off. And then you sort of got wrapped up in the same old high school games, but in a different way. So it was weird how that played into our world for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think that that's become like this giant high school thing. But I've seen that in other people too, like even in boomers, I've seen them have like their or neighborhoods, like suburbs, like friends in the suburb, soccer moms. Just look at all of the series of housewives, the Beverly Hills Housewives and Orange County Housewives. Like
Mm.
that's all kind of the same sort of like high school kind of
Mm.
drama. Who's popular? Who's doing what? It's so clicky and all that sort of stuff, and you have that literally in social media as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some strive to be special. Is what I always said that
Mm-hmm.
my the one thing my ex really got right was that he always said that people just want to feel special.
Mm-hmm.
And we both agree. Like we're like, it's really obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But can you bring that down another level? Why do people want to feel special?
Yeah, the
What does
why.
feeling special do for someone?
Yeah.
Like you're caught in this dichotomy where you want to feel special, but you also want to blend in.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you want to be accepted, but then you also want to be unique.
Right.
So, everyone seems to be trying to walk that line. And why does that matter? Is that our tribe mentality? Is that our pack mentality, I should say? That whole idea that our is that the right word? Primordial?
Yeah. An origin.
Yeah, where we feel our primitive kind of ingrained. We need to be in a pack in order to feel safe,
Yep.
in order to feel protected. And so we need to be accepted.
Yep.
But then also, how do you be a leader? How do you get more of the food source is by everyone liking you
Yeah, right.
or something?
Yeah.
Is it something like that
Yeah,
that's built into
along
us?
those lines.
And then you have people like us where we're kind of like, yeah, no, you guys, I don't know. Because we were like this in high school. Both of us were.
Yeah.
Right. We were
Yep.
both like, I like different people from different groups. I don't really want
Yeah.
to be a part of one group. I'll hedge my bets against every group
Yeah.
of like friends in each clique
Yeah.
instead of belonging to one
Right.
clique.
Yep.
And then we weren't influenced as badly either then
No.
because we didn't feel like we needed to go along with the gang. And we find that in our adult life as well, where
Yep.
we're like, well, we're not liberal Democrat, but we're not Republican conservative either.
Right.
We're like libertarian in the middle. Like we see benefits in both,
Yeah.
We just like have our own core foundations.
I've always been that way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that better? Is that worse? I mean, we think about if the world is ending and people start, going hungry, would we want to be like the show Jericho and belong to a city? Or would we be better off out scavenging on our own separately,
Well, I know my answer. I don't want anything to do with the cities.
Yeah, I almost feel like I would rather die alone, like starve and die alone than to have to deal with the disappointment of seeing people murder each other because they get hungry or because they get desperate. And the sadness of seeing people go to extremes when they're under duress hurts my heart. It makes me lose faith in humanity.
Yeah. And that goes back to the primitive, like a primitive state of being, which I don't think that's why we're here. I think as humans where we are in the 2000, this millennium is, we're still trying to straddle that primitive sense of our physical beings with our spiritual or energetic presence, whatever you want to call it,
consciousness
Yeah.
too. And that's what we say, like how do you override your primitive being, your primitive drives? And is that what true consciousness is that truly being awake, is being able to make decisions that go against
what your instincts tell you,
what the skin of man does? Like we turning away from sin, the being of flesh, it seems to be just in general easy to fall into sin. So the decision, the choice to say no, I don't want to eat that entire chocolate cake, or I'm not going to eat that entire chocolate cake because I know that it's not better for me, even though my body really wants it. That's just the smaller scale of it, right?
Yeah.
Is true consciousness.
Right.
The level of awareness and then the ability to make a decision that goes against it.
So would true consciousness or other levels of consciousness be what overrides you from staying in victimhood all the time too? Making a decision to not be a victim and to learn from whatever trauma you think you went through?
That's a great point. Yeah, and until you're aware of that, you don't really get the opportunity to examine it and then make the decision. So you have to wake up to being able to, and you have to be humble enough to be able to say what can I do about this?
Yeah, that humbleness is really important and overlooked, isn't it?
It's so overlooked.
Because right now, again, coming back to social media, that's what the behavior that's reinforced is to fight for your belief system. Your current belief system, even though it may be incorrect and self-detrimental, which it usually is, to hang on to a victimhood or trying to be right, that's your ego.
Yeah.
I am right, and I'm going to send you a bunch of reports on why I'm right, and I'm going to type you long paragraphs.
Yes.
And this is what people do. This is a behavior we all see out there from armchair warriors that have pretty much like their only option to have a voice, it seems to be online. And that's all ego. That's all ego and a false sense of identity.
Right.
Protection mechanisms against their fragile psyche of victimhood.
Yeah, their card, like they protect their victim card at all. Like that's what we have all these cards that people try to play, and I remember I was like I didn't know a single mom had a card. I could have been playing that my whole life. Damn it. Or most of my life. But like there's all of these cards that you can play that are basically in the deck of victim deck of cards. How about that?
Yeah,
that's a really interesting,
because
we should come up with a victim deck.
You can
like which one do you want to like use today in order to get what you want? Because that's the other point of it, is you can get what you want by having these cards too.
You can take this out if you want, but as a young white male, I've never quite figured out what card I have. Because I've seen a lot.
Well, you have a dead father card now.
Yeah.
So maybe
but
that
in
one
my
will work
past,
for you.
I remember for years, I'm like, I would see.
Oh, you have a wife who went through cancer card.
Yeah, I do have that.
Yes,
yeah.
You got 2 cards now.
Yay. I had no cards. I had a shitty hand. Even though apparently I was supposed to be a supreme hand, Some would even say the dealer,
Your white privilege card didn't work out for you.
Even in my general past, when I feel like I would reach for a card, I didn't like the feeling. I know I tried to play the Crohn's card when I was younger too, having Crohn's. One, most people don't know what the fuck that is.
Right.
And it's hard to convey inner physical pain to people that like they don't care. They don't care how you're feeling. Like and it's sad, it saddened me a lot. I would feel like I would have to explain like what it was and how it would make me feel. And then I would just feel really uncomfortable playing that card. Because I'm like, people were like, oh, they would treat you like you're a disease sort of. And it was like, that's really sad. Like, I can't spread it to you. Like, why are you looking at me like I'm contagious or something, and I was like, okay, well, I ain't gonna play that card anymore.
Yeah, Crohn's is a gut disease.
Yeah. But seriously, some
But they
people,
just didn't know.
they didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Even if I explained it to them, they'd be like, "Oh, like
Yeah.
you wouldn't get what you wanted out of it. The card didn't play right,
Right.
But in general, I didn't like the feeling of playing any cards after that point.
And why do you think that is?
Because it actually felt disempowering. So this is what's interesting. Maybe this is a difference between me and people that like being a victim. Is I didn't like that feeling. Maybe it's just preference. For some reason, some people really like that feeling of having those cards, so to speak, or having that facade. I don't know what it is, but I don't.
Well, what do you want to be known for is really kind of it.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean like known for in a famous world,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what is your your mode of apparatus? What do you want to be? I remember like when we ended up telling the neighbors, that I had cancer. I just felt like everybody looked at me so different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and it's funny because before that, when I would say I'm a marriage counselor, people would look at me like, oh, and then when I had cancer, then they were like, oh, and they're both kind of like uh, a category that somebody's trying to put you in, and I never like to be categorized because I change, like I change my person. I'm constantly growing, developing, trying to be a better person. So I don't ever want to be stuck in a hole somewhere where somebody's like, that person is this.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of it. But I think some people need, like maybe they feel like they don't have anything else to offer. Maybe they feel like the only thing they have going for them is whatever victimhood they can hold on to.
Yeah.
And we had a friend who was like that. Like, only thing she ever talked about was...
Oh, geez. Yeah.
The only thing she ever talked about was any sort of victim kind of thing that ever went on in her life. You know, if she had gotten sick or if she had ever been in an abusive relationship, that's all she wanted to talk about. And those things... They do make for interesting conversation over how's the weather outside and the fact that I am growing herbs in my pots out back. Like it does make for a little bit more drama and interesting, but at the same time, it just gets super depressing.
Well,
you couldn't have any conversation without it turning back to this victimhood, and it was like, I have compassion for you, and I'm sorry that you went through those things, but do you have anything else to offer into this conversation, into our relationship, besides constantly playing your victim cards over and over and over again?
Well, that relationship friendship was important to me to learn in that way also, because I think that opened my eyes too.
To yourself doing it?
To myself.
It was a mirror.
That friendship began with that kind of talk.
You connected on a victim level. Like we both have gone through this sort of victim thing.
Yep.
So now that's what we have in common.
But the shifting point was, victims get tired of other victims. The shifting point was when said person would continue to be a victim of everything.
Right. And you wanted to grow and heal.
And I wanted to grow and heal. But so then when I was going through a tough lesson, it would always come back to her. So victims sometimes can like the spotlight so much, and it's like, well, I went through this. It's like, no, I just want you to hear me now.
Yeah.
And you're not hearing me, and I can't relate to you because you're always in this state.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I'm actually in a low point right now, and I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't get that. And so that fractured the friendship right there.
Well, it gets hard because they find like, oh, you're going through this too, and it's not because... For them, a lot of times it's not like, oh, now we can relate to each other. No. It's like, oh, now I get the opportunity to tell you about my sad story. Because every time I tell anyone that I've had cancer, they always want to be like, let me tell you my story about cancer and the person who I knew who went through cancer. And I'm okay with that. Like, I don't need that. But it's funny how it's like, no, they don't really care. They just care that that's now a door to them being able to play their victim card.
Right.
Oh, you played a victim card. I have one. Let me see if this trumps
mine.
it.
Yeah.
Like that girl on SNL. I know we don't like SNL, but there's some characters or some, especially in the past. The one-upper, she's so freaking funny.
Well.
She's always like... I have cancer. Yeah, I had 400 cancers at one time. And she twirls her hair.
Yeah.
I had the biggest cancer ever.
Yeah, it's such
I had a
wall
of cancer.
Because I feel like so many people embody that person. Always like
right?
one-upping no matter what. Like, my God, this isn't a dang competition.
No, I don't understand. And why do they need to? Because they need to feel more special. They need to feel better.
I'm telling you, we're just in kindergarten time, in adulthood.
Right. Like, but I don't think you answered my question. Why do people need to feel special? Yeah. Like what's underneath that layer? What does it give them? It gives them a sense of superiority?
I think it's different situations, but I think one is a sense of superiority. And
now
or
I have
now I have value
in the world.
Yep. And the other thing other than value is I think it like right down to chemicals, like a dopamine release too.
It does give
on a miniature level,
Yeah. And they feel valid. They feel like there's one sense where you can say, I talk about my past and the trauma that I've gone through in order to like heal. Because like when you go through a severe breakup, divorce, or death, you need to talk about it for a very long time. Mm-hmm. But at some point you've got to let it go and move on and redefine yourself, redefine your life and your purpose and your passion. If your purpose is to constantly relive the bad things in your life, what kind of life is that? I did that. I had when I first moved to the Madison area, I had started out with a divorce group, and it was called Back to Me. And it was an opportunity to have a circle of people come around. It was like a support group for people who've gone through divorce. And they could come in and they would tell their story every week, and then we would all kind of talk through it. And I would give a little bit of advice here and there. And depending on where different people were in their divorce or through their healing stage, I'd give different advice for different people depending on where they were. And I remember at some point, they were like, well, you told her this, but you told me this. I'm like, because you're two different people and you're in two different stages right now, But the other thing that kept happening, that's the reason why that I ended that group, was because people would come in every week and we would have new people come in. And so everyone would go around and they would tell their story. And I was realizing how it was seeding that story into their personality and who they were. Like they were talking about it, not in a way to heal, but in a way to feel like, look at me, I have gone through this sadness and trauma as a badge. Like it was like, look at my badge of sadness. And it was not, they're not healing from that. If you keep repeating your story of the badness that you went through, they weren't healing. Some of them did, some of them took it and then it healed and they moved on. Right. But other people were not doing it. It was what I was seeing as kind of like a perpetual victim is what I started to call it. And I guess that's an actual term, but I called it that. And I would find that in my coaching practice too. I would literally tell people, you're not going to like coaching with me because I'm going to make you change. Right. Like I'm going to challenge you constantly, and it might feel uncomfortable and it will feel annoying at times that I'm not going to allow. I give you a little bit of time to tell your story, to complain about it, to feel into the feelings of it. And then I'm going to move you to what can you do about it now? And how do you move forward and how do you get out of this? Because there are people who went to counseling for 6 years and they would come into my coaching practice and they just would go there and they would tell their story constantly to this person over and over and over again. And they never corrected them. It was just a sounding board. And everybody needs a sounding board. But at some point it's like, okay, get up and let's get out there and do something. Take back your life. Take back your power and be the person you want to be. Don't let your stories and your history define who your future is or what your future is and who you are. Let it be something you've experienced, not who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you mean by the ego. Like they
Yes.
identify with that.
Yes.
I am this victim.
Yeah.
And you actually have the power to identify as something else. Be someone who feeds the homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Be somebody who, is passionate about planting herbs in your garden.
Yeah.
Get a hobby. Like,
I know.
and I know that sounds almost like degrading in people who have gone through major trauma, and y'all don't know the half of what I've been through.
Yeah.
Not even people who are very close to me know what I've gone through.
Right.
So I'm speaking I get a card. I got quite a few cards. So just so you know, I'm not going to use them.
Yeah, I feel that way. Slightly different. I was thinking about us too. Like 2020 was traumatizing for a lot of people, but I think when you add in potentially losing your partner,
Mm-hmm.
what almost happened to us in the middle of all that
Mm-hmm.
was a very dramatic story. But I don't want to hang on to that. Like,
No, but I mean, I'm talking about not just recently. I'm talking about my history in general.
oh, I know your history. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
like-
just saying, like, as
Well,
far
I
as
just wanted-
recent history.
Like engrossing yourself in other things that make you feel better or that help contribute to the world and make the world a better place is a way better place to use that energy, to forward it, to give back to the world. And yeah, planting herbs can do that. And yeah, learning how to, do Pilates can do that. Like focus your energy is what I'm saying, is focus your energy into something else. That anger, that pain, that sadness, whatever that came out of that, take that and use it for good. Turn it into gold. Be Midas and turn that into gold. And that could be something little or something big.
You ever, like, what can you do to not have to play those cards? Because I feel like in the world, like, people look at you, let's just say people like me and you are we move on, right? And like through the worst things, we still maintain like a decent level of like positive or neutral outlook,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like sometimes that gets viewed as like naive and inexperienced sometimes, where like people are like, oh yeah, like you're insensitive or you're...
Oh, you mean from our own trauma?
No. I just mean, I'm saying like when you present yourself out into the world, that I feel like people don't know you, right? And there's certain ways that people get to know people, but I feel like sometimes all of us, not just me, get treated like we're like young, naive people that have no story. And I feel like I personally have to like put my cards out there. Like, I've seen some shit. It's almost like a proving ground. I feel that way all the time.
Oh, maybe that's part of why they use it too.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's with men or maybe women experience it too, but it always seems like you get treated like you were born yesterday.
Yeah.
Unless you play a card or tell people about things you've been through, and then they respect you more if you play your cards.
Oh, it's a way to gain respect too.
Yeah, it's weird.
And also to show, hey, I have a seat at the table at this topic because I have a card.
Yeah.
Basically, I can talk on this topic.
My question is, like, is there a way around that? Because I find it very annoying. Like, I don't like to advertise that. I don't like to play my cards and put them out there. We already discussed that. So
Yeah.
Is that part of that pack mentality again, where you have to, the tribe mentality, where you have to like prove yourself as a warrior or belong to a group or something? Like, I don't want to be a part of your group, but I do still feel that pressure to like have to do that around people sometimes.
Yeah.
Is there a way around that?
For you, or for
not
the average
just for
person?
me,
'Cause
but
some
for the
people-
average person. Like, why do people need to do that? Like, either or. Why do people feel like, you need to prove yourself? Otherwise, I'm just going to treat you like some dumb kid or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Why do people act like that to begin with? Is that their own insecurity? I just see it a lot. I'm not talking about one person.
Can you give me an example?
Well, coworkers.
Okay.
There's like a lot of, it seems like a lot of mainly older men or middle-aged men that always kind of treat me, but I see it with other people too, but with like, oh, you're the new guy. And it is because I'm always the new guy. I'm always learning. And when you move, you are the new guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like to some extent, sometimes you have to, it's unspoken too. It's more of an
is it a masculine energy thing that's
it
like
might
trying
be.
to establish dominance?
Yeah, it might be. Because I'm not even talking now. I'm just saying in my whole history, it just seems like unless you have some kind of masculine story or trait,
Mm-hmm.
you're disregarded or you're treated differently,
Mm-hmm. Why would you want that to change? Or are you saying, how do you respond to it?
No, I'm not talking about how I respond to it. I'm talking is that structure changeable in the fabric of society?
I
Can we
would
get
hope it could be, because that, again, is a consciousness. It's
right?
saying, I can feel myself wanting to dominate this energy or this situation or this person or whatever, the corporate culture of this company or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to change that, and I want to make that more inclusive or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I want everybody to feel warm and welcome. But there might be, I mean, we have this tendency, we need a hierarchy as human beings. And I hate that,
Mm-hmm.
because hierarchies tend to end up, that's what causes this rise and collapse of everything, systems, from
Mm-hmm.
corporations to governments, and it causes corruption, and but there's also this necessity for it, which I hate. I think that's why a lot of people are trying to go towards like, oh, I just want a commune where everybody can get along. But guess what? In communes, there is a hierarchy also. There will always be a hierarchy.
Right.
So there's never going to be full equality, which I feel like we all want, but at the same time, we all want a leader too.
Right.
So there is a need for this like dominance, improve yourself. What can you bring to the table?
Yeah.
What do you have to offer? Show me your cards,
Right.
I don't know how you get out of that besides just going and living off the grid and living off the land. But believe it or not, living off the land and living on your own, you're still in a state of hierarchy with nature then.
True.
Like either it's going to take you or you're going to take it.
Well, I can handle that more than people.
Why?
That's just my personality, maybe.
For me, it's because I hate feeling disappointed in people. I've always believed that there's like people are innately good, and lately I've been given the big W over and over again. And when I say W, if any of you have seen the movie The Fifth Element, you would know that like at the end of the movie The Fifth Element, she actually she goes through the whole encyclopedia and learns all about humanity and Earth. And then when she gets to the letter W, which was war, she just loses all of her strength and ability to, and hope and desire to help humanity. She just becomes completely apathetic. And then, Bruce Willis, he has to come and show her love, and love is what ends up igniting her and helps her to be the fifth element. Spoiler alert. So, but I feel like I get the letter W quite a bit lately with everything going on, and it really breaks my heart to see how many people in the world are victim mentality, trying to change other people, trying to take away freedom, trying to tell people what they need to do, not allow, they speak out of one side of their mouth as equality, and the other side of the mouth trying to like get people to do something different. There's this huge dichotomy in all these different areas and topics lately, and the one thing that we have more than anything ever is division, and it's division amongst people. And then I feel like for us, we're just sitting here like, can we just all just get along? Can we all just get along? But then they're like, yeah, you need to treat me this way because of my victim cards. And then I'm like, I don't like, that's fine. But I don't really want to mess with you then. Like, please just
That's
go away. I'm not gonna take all this time, effort, and energy to make sure I am not stepping on your landmines. It's easier to just not mess with you.
yeah,
Just go away then.
yeah.
Find
That
someone else who's gonna do that.
that's a good segue back to the beginning. What I wanted to elaborate on before we close out is the topic of control and chaos. Like, how do we maintain emotional self control versus being a victim and or trying to change others to suit you in these trying times is the question.
Well,
Like,
we've never had a better opportunity to learn that balance.
exactly. And I had a client that had some anger issues, being like, he was pretty self-controlled, but he had anger issues in heated moments. And his partner maintained like an emotional control in those situations. And it was actually eye-opening to me to try to help him through this, because I saw that behavior too, how it's really easy in these very stressful situations to reach levels you wouldn't think you would reach in emotional control when you have the world around you burning down, is what it would feel like. And I can identify with that.
And you think his anger was an attempt to control that? To control the world around him rather than himself?
Yeah, exactly.
When he felt out of control,
Right.
he tried to control the world around him.
Yeah, and that was very eye-opening, because I've been there myself, and that's really interesting. Like, I feel like those are really good lessons for the world we live in now. I personally feel like, not trying to prophesize the future, but it's not going to get better anytime soon. We're going to have
It may get
to
worse.
learn this emotional control now rather than later.
Right.
And I feel like our society is purposely being steered to be victims. Who knows, for various reasons, but we actually need to fight against that. We actually need to not pander to the side of trying to change others for our false sense of security and whatever it brings to people. We actually need to learn emotional control now, whether it's our anger or deep trauma, links to trauma, whatever it may be, or even just that you don't like someone's opinion on social media. We need to learn emotional control now and how we should handle conflict before it's too late.
So how did he handle that?
Well, in the end, he slowed himself down, for one. I do think it's consciousness. Like, he would, the way he described it and the way we worked together was to help him, like, slow things down in a moment, because it's easy as humans to react in situations like that. It's almost like military training. Like, you don't go shooting everyone.
Right.
Like, you have to be.
The adrenaline can get you all lost in that, and you have to learn to control the trigger control.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It really is. But it felt like one of the steps for him that worked was slowing things down and trying to assess the situation from a higher point of consciousness, really. Like, is this worth it? And people get lost in that ego of having to be right too. Like, do you want to hurt the other person or other people, or is it just something that's probably not worth going down the avenue of explosive rage or saying the wrong things or whatever the outcome would be, right?
Yeah. And I bet you, when his girlfriend when she was in a state of like calmness, did that make him more angry, or did that help him calm down?
Well, it's funny you say that, because it seemed like that came up, like, that it would actually enrage him more. And that's really interesting, because you would think that would water down the situation, right? But
yeah,
I think in that I think a lot of times what people are looking for when they get into any kind of victim mode, even if it's rage,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking for um they're looking for something to make them feel better. They want somebody on their side because they're probably triggered and feel
Mm-hmm.
cornered or alone in some way. Usually
Oh,
I
so
think
they are
that's the
trying.
stem of that.
Yeah. If I have someone on my side. But the other thing is that I've seen with couples when they fight like that though is that if they can play off of each other's fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when one person learns emotional control, it's like, wait a minute, why aren't you playing with me with this fire anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And also then they feel shame. Like,
Mm.
oh my God, I'm the one who's getting so crazy and worked up here, and she's completely calm, or vice versa. It's been
Mm-hmm.
men and women.
Yep.
And she's so calm, which is making me feel like a fool for myself.
Mm.
I'm feeling more embarrassed, feeling like more out of control. And so then I have to more want to control. I want to get her mad so that she can look as stupid as I'm looking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or feel as out of control as I'm like.
Which is a
There's
manipulation
envy.
tactic.
There's so many things happening in that moment that gets really crazy.
Yeah.
But when they come back to themselves and they take a moment, take a deep breath, walk away, put water on their face, come back, think, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy?
Yeah. And I think a good lesson out of that too with that client was trust. A lot of it comes down to trust. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't trust who you're fighting with, you're going to assume the worst. You're going to make more assumptions, which are just going to push you further along, right?
Okay.
If you think they're being manipulative by exhibiting that behavior that you just demonstrated, right? About
The calmness?
the calmness to make the other person look like an idiot, basically.
Oh, so that's their view, is that I think they're looking calm to make me look like I'm an idiot, crazy. Yep. I'm not crazy, you're crazy.
Right. If they truly believe that's what the other person is doing, that's a trust issue.
Mm.
But if they actually step back, take a breath, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and think like, well, does whoever the person, do they really want to hurt
Mm-hmm.
me? Are they
Mm-hmm.
really trying to manipulate me right now? Or is it just a misunderstanding that we probably should just talk about when we calm down a little bit?
Unfortunately, that is it's funny because people get all caught up in this word narcissist and it drives me nuts, but narcissists actually use that technique, and then it can be misconstrued. Mm-hmm. And you're right. If you don't trust or you don't know the person you're dealing with, and you know that they're not a narcissist and that their intentions are to stay calm for their own self and for the sake of the relationship, you know that it's good intentions and not a way to kind of keep poking you while they stay calm so that you can look crazier. That's the gaslighting, right? That happens. That's what gaslighting is. Right, true gaslighting. But they can look very similar. So it can be hard to determine, is somebody being manipulative or is somebody does they actually have good and heart-centered intentions?
Yeah.
And that's only you can determine that. Yeah. But you can't determine that in a state of anger and frustration and especially in a state of feeling like a victim.
Right.
Because honestly, most victims of narcissism don't know that they're victims.
True.
So if you think you're a victim of narcissist, then you probably aren't. And if you know that, then you would get out of it. Right. Like if you know you're a victim, then you would get out of it.
Yeah, I think I said this in other recordings. Please stop labeling people narcissists just because you have a disagreement or
they've changed the definition of so many words just recently. This double speak that we're seeing in the world, and narcissist is one of them. Gaslighting. I see people say that all the time. Like, okay, narcissist does not mean egotistical.
Right.
All narcissists are egotistical, but not all egotistical people are narcissists. Okay? Thank you.
There you go. Yep. So
I think just in conclusion, I think it's just really important for us to, I could say, hey, go around teaching other people this so that they can have better emotional control. But at this point, it's like, just hold strong to that. And if somebody wants to know how to have emotional control, then they'll ask or they'll come to you.
Yep.
Because those who want to hear will hear, and those who don't want to hear and they want to remain blind and in the dark, there's no reaching them.
No.
And like I was saying earlier, that perpetual victim terminology, I saw that in my coaching practice. I would have clients come in and they just wanted to complain.
Yeah.
They just wanted to feel validated in their victimhood. And I only give that to people for a certain period of time. And it took a while to learn who were the actual perpetual victims and who were the people who were a victim and wanted to heal from it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I won't work with perpetual victims. If all you want to do is come in my office and complain, I don't care if you pay me $300 an hour. I'm not going to. Do you know how taxing that is on me or on a human being to sit and listen to somebody complain and be in that low level energy for an hour long and nothing else, and be focused on their energy and focused on their emotion? Mm-hmm. It's very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
So no, it's not worth $300 an hour to do. I will do it for those who need it.
Right.
And who they need to go through that and they need to talk about it
as a phase, right?
As part of the healing process. Mm-hmm. But I won't do it for somebody who is just doing it just for the sake of doing it, to receive validity. Like, you're a valid human being regardless of your history and your experiences and the victim cards you have. You are a valid and beautiful human being no matter what. Don't use trauma and anger and bad things that have happened to you to define who you are. You're a sovereign being of God. You get to decide who you are and who you want to be. Take that back. Don't make everybody else have to change so that you can feel better. You have given all of your power away when you do that. All of your power, it now belongs to everyone who you say you hate and you can't stand because they won't do what you want them to do. You have given them power over you by letting them control how you feel. Take your control back so that you can have power over them then. Mm-hmm. When somebody can't hurt you, that's the hardest thing ever. Mm-hmm. And I've taught this to women who've been in abusive relationships. In order to get out of that and not repeat that cycle into another relationship, just getting out of an abusive relationship isn't enough. You have to learn to not only put your boundary up, but to say, I'm not going to feel anger towards the person. I'm just going to walk away from that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take back and choose who I allow into my space and who I allow to have emotional influence on me and who I don't. Like me and you, we have emotional influence on each other. We've allowed each other. We've opened up our emotional space to allow each other to influence our emotions. Mm-hmm. And that takes time to trust someone to be able to do that. I trust that you will help me when I'm feeling down, and you trust that I will help you when you're feeling in a certain place too. We lean on each other emotionally, and we actually support each other emotionally, energetically. But you can't just let every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Trump come in and decide how you're going to feel. Let it go. Yeah, exactly. Dude hasn't been in office for a long time. Let him go. Right. Like, geez, take your power back, people. Seriously.
Thank you for that. All that was strong. All right.
Good ending.
Yeah.
We really, really do. I want humanity. I want us to survive. And not just survive. I want us to thrive. I want us to be able to be powerful beings.
We should be.
Yeah.
We can
with the ability to be strong and assertive, but not aggressive, not passive, not submissive, not dominant, but in the middle. We need to have a balance. Yeah. There's great strength that comes through learning how to have emotional control and take that back, and deciding who's going to be able to have influence, not control, influence on your emotions.
Yep.
Until next time, everybody.
Stay high.
Stay high. Congratulations, you've made it all the way to the end of this long-ass podcast. And we want to thank you for joining us. And we want to hear from you. What answers do you have to these questions? What comments do you have? What insight do you have? Share with us. And what questions do you have for the answers? Find us on all podcast apps and on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. And of course, you can find us on our website. Thanks so much for listening, and stay high, everyone.